When I sat at my son's Thanksgiving table at 74 years old and watched everyone exchange gifts while I received absolutely nothing, they had no idea I was about to reveal a secret empire that would leave them completely speechless. What I did next didn't just serve ice-cold revenge, it changed my entire family's perception of me forever. But before we dive into this incredible story of how one forgotten grandmother turned the tables in the most epic way possible, smash that like button if you love seeing justice served, subscribe for more revenge stories that will blow your mind, and comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. My name is Martha Ellison, and at 74, I had become the kind of grandmother who baked from scratch, but ate alone. I lived by myself in a modest brick home on the outskirts of Knoxville, Tennessee, surrounded by memories of my 45-year marriage to my late husband, Carl. The house still smelled faintly of his aftershave and my homemade apple pies, a combination that both comforted me and reminded me of everything I'd lost. For 3 years since Carl's passing, I had watched my relationship with my only son, Brian, slowly crumble like autumn leaves. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was the kind of quiet erosion that happens when politeness replaces genuine care, when duty calls become less frequent, and when a daughter-in-law's subtle coldness finally wins the war of family dynamics. Dana, Brian's wife of 15 years, had mastered the art of exclusion wrapped in Southern charm. She was always sweet as pie on the surface, with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair and her Instagram-worthy home in Savannah, but I could feel the chill beneath every interaction. Dana had a way of making me feel like an outsider at my own family gatherings, always just a little too late with the invitations, always somehow forgetting to include me in family group chats, always having just enough food for everyone except one extra plate. After Carl died, I tried desperately to maintain my connection to Brian and his family. I would drive the 6 hours from Knoxville to Savannah with homemade pecan pies and chess squares, hoping to bridge whatever gap seemed to be widening between us. I offered to babysit my grandchildren, 14-year-old Ava and 16-year-old Tyler, whenever Dana needed help. I suggested family beach trips to Gulf Shores, like we used to take when Brian was young. I called every week, sent birthday cards that arrived early, and never missed a school play or football game. But slowly, painfully, the invitations stopped coming. My weekly calls became monthly, then quarterly, then almost nothing at all. My offers to babysit were politely declined. Dana always had other arrangements. My beach trip suggestions were met with vague responses about busy schedules and prior commitments. I began to feel like I was chasing ghosts, reaching out to people who were slowly but deliberately pulling away. The silence was deafening. Months would pass without hearing Brian's voice. My 73rd birthday came and went without so much as a phone call. When I tried calling them, conversations felt forced and brief, like I was interrupting something more important. Dana would answer with that honey-sweet voice, "Oh, hi, Martha. We're actually just heading out, but I'll tell Brian you called." The promise of a return call that never came became a familiar sting. I spent my days tending to my small garden, reading romance novels from the library, and watching cooking shows that reminded me of the meals I used to make for a full house. The loneliness was a constant companion, sitting beside me at the kitchen table where I ate dinner alone, following me to bed where I'd lie awake wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could do differently to earn my place back in my son's life. I tried to fill the emptiness with volunteer work at the local food bank and activities at my church, but nothing could replace the ache of feeling forgotten by the people who were supposed to love me most. Every holiday that passed without an invitation felt like another small death, another confirmation that I had somehow become expendable in the family I had helped create and nurture. The worst part wasn't just the isolation, it was the confusion. I replayed every interaction, every conversation, every family gathering, trying to pinpoint the moment when things went wrong. Had I been too involved? Not enough involved? Had I said something to offend Dana? Failed to support Brian in some crucial way? The questions circled my mind like vultures, picking at my self-worth until I began to wonder if maybe I really was the problem. Then, on a crisp November morning that started like any other, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dana's name, a sight so rare it made my heart race with a mixture of hope and anxiety. "Martha, hi there, it's Dana. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I nearly dropped my coffee mug. It had been over a year since I had heard from any of them, aside from a generic Christmas card with a printed family photo and no personal note. "Oh, no, not at all. It's so good to hear from you, honey." "Well, I was calling because we're having our usual Thanksgiving dinner this year, and we'd love for you to join us. I know it's been a while since we've all gotten together, and the kids have been asking about their grandmother." The words hit me like a warm wave. They'd been asking about me? Maybe I hadn't been as forgotten as I had feared. Maybe this long, cold silence had just been a rough patch, and now they were ready to rebuild our relationship. Maybe Dana had realized how important family was, especially during the holidays. "I would absolutely love that," I said, trying to keep the overwhelming relief out of my voice. "When should I be there?" "Thanksgiving Day, of course. We usually eat around 2, so maybe come around noon? We do this fun little tradition where everyone brings small gifts to exchange after dinner. Nothing fancy, just little tokens of appreciation. I thought you'd enjoy that." My mind was already racing of possibilities. I could stop by the local boutique and pick up something special for Ava. Maybe one of those beautiful scented candles she used to love when she was younger. And Brian had always been a writer in his soul. Even though he worked in finance now, perhaps a nice leather journal would remind him of his creative side. For Dana, maybe a kitchen gadget or some artisanal soaps. Something thoughtful, but that showed I was paying attention to her interests. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "I can't wait to see everyone." "Great. And oh, Martha, don't worry about bringing any food this year. I've got everything covered." Even that small rejection of my usual contribution, my famous pecan pie that Brian used to request every holiday, couldn't dampen my spirits. They wanted me there. After more than a year of silence, they were inviting me back into the fold. Maybe Carl's death had taught them all something about the importance of family. Maybe they'd realized how much they'd missed me. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of cautious excitement, shopping for the perfect gifts and mentally preparing for what I hoped would be a new chapter in our relationship. I chose a beautiful vanilla and lavender candle for Ava, housed in an elegant jar that could be reused later. For Brian, I found a gorgeous leather-bound journal with unlined pages, perfect for sketching or writing the novel he used to talk about. And for Dana, I selected a high-quality kitchen gadget set with a bamboo cutting board and matching utensils. Something practical, but thoughtful. For the first time in years, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. The 6-hour drive from Knoxville to Savannah gave me plenty of time to rehearse conversations and imagine the warm reunion that awaited me. I drove through the rolling hills of eastern Tennessee, past the sprawling suburbs of Atlanta, and into the moss-draped beauty of coastal Georgia, my heart growing lighter with each mile that brought me closer to my family. I had left early, wanting to arrive with plenty of time to settle in and maybe help with last-minute preparations, despite Dana's insistence that everything was handled. The autumn landscape blurred past my windows as I listened to soft jazz and mentally prepared for what I hoped would be a healing day. But the moment I pulled into the familiar driveway, I sensed something was off. The house looked the same, a beautiful colonial with white columns and perfectly manicured landscaping, but there was no one waiting on the porch to greet me. No faces pressed against the windows, no excited children running out to hug their grandmother they hadn't seen in over a year. I gathered my gifts and overnight bag and walked to the front door, ringing the bell like a stranger rather than family. It was Brian who answered, and while his smile was genuine, it felt hurried, distracted. "Mom, you made it! Come on in." He gave me a quick hug that felt more obligatory than heartfelt. "Dana's in the kitchen, and the kids are around somewhere."
The house smelled amazing. Roasted turkey and sage stuffing, sweet potato casserole and fresh rolls. It was exactly the kind of feast I used to prepare in my own home, back when I was the one hosting Thanksgiving for my growing family. But now I was a guest in what felt increasingly like a stranger's house. "Martha, so glad you could make it," Dana called from the kitchen, not bothering to come greet me properly. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the right. I hope it's okay. I haven't had time to really prepare it properly." I climbed the stairs to find the guest room that had once been Brian's childhood bedroom. The bed was made, but the linens were mismatched and smelled slightly musty, as if they'd been pulled from a closet at the last minute. The curtains were dusty, and there were no fresh flowers or little touches that might make a guest feel welcomed and cherished. It was functional, but cold, much like my reception so far. I unpacked my few belongings and freshened up, trying to shake off the growing feeling that this invitation hadn't been extended out of love or genuine desire for my company. There was a performative quality to their interactions, as if they were checking off a box labeled "Include Grandma," rather than truly welcoming me back into their lives. When we finally gathered around the dinner table, my placement told the whole story. While Brian sat at the head of the table and Dana at the foot, with Tyler and Ava flanking them on either side, I was seated at the far end, almost like an afterthought. The beautiful centerpiece blocked much of my view of the family, and the conversation seemed to flow around me rather than include me. The meal itself was lovely. Dana was an excellent cook, and the turkey was perfectly golden, the sides expertly seasoned. But the dinner conversation made me feel like I was watching a movie of someone else's family rather than participating in my own. "That's wonderful, honey," I would interject when there was a pause, trying to show interest and support. But my contributions felt forced and unwelcome, interrupting the natural flow of their family dynamics. No one asked about my life, my health, my interests, or how I'd been spending my time during our long separation. No one inquired about my volunteer work at the food bank, my reading club at the library, or the small garden I'd been nurturing. It was as if I existed only in this moment, with no past worth discussing and no future worth considering. But the real devastation was yet to come. After dinner, as we moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, Dana clapped her hands together with theatrical enthusiasm. "Okay, everyone, time for our little gift exchange tradition. I love this part of Thanksgiving, just small tokens to show we're thinking of each other." My heart lifted slightly. This was my moment to show them I still cared, still paid attention, still wanted to be part of their traditions. I had chosen each gift so carefully, wrapped them with such love, written heartfelt notes expressing my gratitude for being included and my deep affection for each of them. Everyone gathered in a circle in the living room, a small pile of wrapped gifts in the center. I noticed immediately that my contributions made up a significant portion of the gift pile, but I pushed down the small voice that wondered why there seemed to be so few presents for the number of people participating. "Let's start with Dad," Dana announced, and Brian reached for one of the larger packages. He unwrapped an expensive-looking gadget from Dana, some kind of high-tech grilling thermometer that connected to his phone. "This is perfect, babe. I've been wanting to upgrade my barbecue game." He leaned over to kiss his wife, and I felt a small pang watching their easy affection. Tyler opened his gift next, a sleek pair of wireless headphones from his parents that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. "These are sick. Thanks, Mom and Dad." He immediately began examining the packaging, eager to try them out. Ava unwrapped a beautiful charm bracelet, also from Brian and Dana, with delicate silver charms representing her various interests and achievements. Oh my gosh, I love it. Look, there's a tiny gavel for debate team and a book for my love of reading. She hugged both parents enthusiastically. Then it was my turn to give. I handed Brian his gift with trembling hands, watching as he carefully unwrapped the leather journal I'd chosen with such care. "It's for your writing," I said softly. "I remember how you used to talk about wanting to write a novel someday. I thought maybe—" "Thanks, Mom. It's nice." Brian's response was polite but flat, lacking any real enthusiasm or recognition of the thought I had put into the choice. He set it aside quickly, as if eager to move on. Ava opened her candle with more genuine appreciation. "Oh, Grandma, this smells amazing. Vanilla and lavender, those are my favorite scents. Thank you." At least one person seemed to recognize that I had been paying attention, had chosen something specifically with the recipient in mind. Dana opened her kitchen set with that practiced smile I had come to dread. "How thoughtful, Martha. I'm sure I'll find a use for these." The dismissive tone made it clear that Dana's gourmet kitchen, with its top-of-the-line appliances and professional-grade tools, had no need for my modest offering. But then came the moment that shattered my heart completely. As the gift exchange continued, I waited for my turn to receive something. I watched as Brian and Dana exchanged gifts with each other, his and hers matching luxury watches that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. I waited as the children opened additional gifts from various family friends and extended relatives. And then there was nothing. I sat in my chair, hands folded in my lap, watching everyone else enjoy their presents while I remained empty-handed. The silence stretched on, becoming more awkward with each passing second, until even Tyler looked up from his new headphones with a confused expression. "Oh no," Dana said finally, her voice dripping with false concern. "I must have missed yours in the shuffle, Martha. I'm so sorry. I could have sworn I had something set aside for you." The lie was so transparent, so cruel in its casual delivery, that I felt like I had been slapped. Dana hadn't forgotten anything. There had never been a gift intended for me, never been any real thought given to including me in this family tradition she specifically told me about. "Granny's used to it," Tyler mumbled under his breath, not looking up from his phone, where he was already setting up his new headphones. The casual cruelty of that comment, the implication that being forgotten, being overlooked, being treated as an afterthought was just something I should accept, hit me like a physical blow. But it was the laughter that followed, the quick chuckles from Brian and Ava that suggested this was somehow funny, that nearly broke me. I sat perfectly still, my face composed despite the storm raging inside my chest. Years of being pushed aside, months of silence, and now this ultimate humiliation, being the only person at a family gift exchange who received nothing, whose presence was so unimportant that no one had bothered to think of me at all. But they had no idea that their forgotten, overlooked, pushed aside grandmother had been far from idle during their months of silence. If you think I'm about to serve some serious justice, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. I sat in that uncomfortable silence for a moment, watching my family's awkward expressions as they processed what had just happened. I could see the mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness on their faces. They knew this was wrong, but they weren't quite sure how to handle being caught in such blatant disregard for my feelings. But instead of the tears they might have expected, instead of the hurt protestations or wounded exit they probably feared, I simply reached into my purse with the calm, deliberate movements of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. You know, I've been meaning to share something with all of you, something I've been working on during all those quiet months when we haven't talked. I pulled out a neat folder containing several printed pages and laid it gently on the coffee table where the gift wrapping was still laying scattered. The simple manila folder looked insignificant among the expensive gadgets and luxury items that had been unwrapped. But there was something about my calm confidence that made everyone in the room suddenly pay attention. I started a little blog a while back, I continued, smoothing the pages with my weathered hands. You remember how I always loved writing those long letters to your Aunt Susan, Brian? And Dana, you used to comment on how organized I was with my recipe collections and household planning. Dana shifted uncomfortably in her seat, probably remembering how she used to dismiss my old-fashioned ways of keeping house and staying organized. Brian leaned forward slightly, confusion evident on his face as he tried to understand where this was going. Well, it turns out that all those years of keeping house, planning meals, organizing family schedules, and finding creative solutions to everyday problems, all those skills you might think are outdated in our digital world, there are actually a lot of women my age who are hungry for that kind of practical wisdom. I opened the folder and pulled out the first page, a printed screenshot of a website header that read, "Second Blooming, Wisdom, Wellness, and Wonder After 60 in elegant script font." I called it Second Blooming, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, because I realized that just because Carl was gone, just because my family had moved on without me, that didn't mean my life was over. It meant it was time for something new. To grow. I pulled out the second page, a graph showing steady upward growth over 18 months. This little blog of mine now has 85,000 regular readers, women from all over the country and even some international followers who tune in twice a week to read about everything from organizing small spaces on a budget to rediscovering your sense of purpose after retirement. The room had gone completely silent. Tyler had actually looked up from his phone with his mouth slightly open. Ava was staring at the papers in my hands as if they contained secret states. Brian and Dana exchanged glances that flickered between confusion and something that might have been the first stirrings of unease. "But Martha," Dana said, her voice higher than usual, that's wonderful that you have a little hobby, but—" "Oh, honey," I interrupted gently. "This stopped being a hobby quite some time ago." I pulled out the third page, a profit and loss statement that would have impressed Brian's finance-trained eye if he'd been able to focus on the numbers through his shock. You see, once I had a steady readership, I started creating products that my audience actually wanted. Digital journals for women over 50 who are rediscovering their goals, printable meal planners designed specifically for smaller households, short ebooks about decluttering your life, not just your closets, but your relationships, your commitments, your mental space. I looked around the room at my family's stunned faces. I sell these through my Etsy shop, and I've also set up affiliate partnerships with companies that make products I genuinely believe in and use myself. Nothing fancy, nothing dishonest, just good products that serve the women who trust me enough to read my recommendations. I pointed to a number on the financial statement that made Brian's eyes widen considerably. Last quarter alone, I made $38,247 in revenue. My expenses are minimal since I work from home, so most of that is pure profit. The silence that followed was deafening. Dana's mouth was hanging open in a way that would have been comical if the moment weren't so charged with emotion. Tyler had completely forgotten about his new headphones and was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. $38,000? Brian whispered. In 3 months? In 3 months, I confirmed. And that's just the financial side of things. The letters I get from my readers, women who tell me that my blog posts about starting over after loss helped them through their own grief, Women who used my organizational systems to finally tackle the overwhelming process of downsizing. Women who found the courage to try new things because I shared my own journey of learning technology and building something from scratch at my age. Those letters are worth more than money. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out the final page, photographs of a beautiful downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furnishings. Which brings me to my other news. I used some of my blog earnings to put a down payment on this condo in downtown Knoxville. It's walking distance from the farmer's market, the river trail, and the most wonderful coffee shop where I've started meeting with a group of women who are all building online businesses. I held up a photo of the condo's bright, airy kitchen. I'll be moving in just after Christmas. No more rattling around in that big brick house with all its memories. This place is perfect for one person who's building a new life rather than just maintaining an old one. The transformation in the room was palpable. What had started as confusion and mild interest had shifted into something much more intense. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes, the recognition that the quiet, forgotten grandmother they'd been ignoring had not only survived their abandonment, but had thrived in ways they couldn't have imagined. "But how?" Dana sputtered. "I mean, how did you learn? When did you have time to—" "I had nothing but time," I said simply. "When your phone stops ringing, when your family stops including you in their lives, you have a choice. You can sit in that silence and let it consume you, or you can fill it with something meaningful." I began gathering the papers, my movements calm and deliberate. I spent months learning about website design, social media marketing, search engine optimization, email list building, all those digital skills that I'm sure you assumed someone my age could never master. I watched YouTube tutorials, took online courses, joined Facebook groups for entrepreneurs. I made mistakes, lots of them, but I kept learning. I looked directly at Brian, my eyes steady and clear. "Remember how you used to say I was good at explaining complicated things in simple ways? That skill translates beautifully to blog rating. Remember how I could always find creative solutions to household problems on a tight budget? Those solutions are exactly what my readers are looking for." I turned to Dana, "And all those years you thought my way of keeping house was old-fashioned? It turns out there's a huge market of women who are tired of complicated systems and expensive organization products. They want simple, practical solutions that actually work in real homes with real budgets." The pride in my voice was unmistakable, but it wasn't boastful or cruel. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had discovered their own worth after others had made them feel worthless. The blog post that really took off was called "The Art of Being Forgotten." I wrote about what it feels like when your adult children stop calling, when holidays come and go without invitations, when you realize you've become invisible to the people you love most. It got shared thousands of times by women who recognized their own experience in my words. I paused, letting that sink in. Apparently, there are a lot of forgotten grandmothers out there, and it turns out we have more power than anyone, including ourselves, realized. Brian was the first to find his voice, though it came out strangled and uncertain. "Mom, I had no idea. This is incredible. I'm so proud of you, but also, I feel terrible that we didn't know about any of this." "Why would you know?" I asked gently. "In the past year and a half, how many times did any of you ask me what I was doing with my time? How many conversations did we have about my interests, my goals, my daily life?" Brian opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly realizing that he couldn't think of a single time he'd shown genuine curiosity about my life during our long estrangement. Dana, meanwhile, was looking at the financial statements with an expression that had shifted from shock to something that looked suspiciously like calculation. "Martha, this is amazing. have you thought about expanding? Maybe turning this into a family business? Brian has such great experience with marketing and finance, and I have contacts in the influencer space. No. The single word, spoken quietly but with absolute finality, stopped Dana mid-sentence. No? Dana repeated, clearly not used to hearing that word from me. No, I said again, my voice still calm, but with an edge of steel that none of them had heard before. This isn't something I built to share with people who couldn't be bothered to include me in their lives. This isn't a project that needs your expertise or your contacts or your business acumen. I looked around the room at each of them in turn. This is something I built for me, by myself, during all those months when none of you called, when you forgot my 73rd birthday, when you had family celebrations and didn't invite me, when you moved on with your lives as if I didn't exist. The accusation hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore or dismiss. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ava looked down at her hands, perhaps remembering her own role in the family's neglect of me. You're only interested now because you've seen the dollar signs. For over a year, none of you wondered if I was lonely, if I was struggling, if I needed help or support or just someone to talk to. But now that you know I've built something successful, suddenly you want to be involved. Brian tried to interrupt. Mom, that's not... Isn't it? I asked. When Dana called to invite me to Thanksgiving, did she ask about my blog? Did anyone ask what I was doing with my time? Did anyone show the slightest curiosity about how I was filling my days? What brought me joy? What challenges I was facing? The silence that followed was answer enough. The only reason any of you know about this now is because I chose to share it. And I chose to share it tonight because I wanted you to understand something important. I don't need you to include me anymore. I've built my own life, my own community, my own purpose. I'm not the forgotten grandmother sitting alone in her house anymore. I'm a successful entrepreneur with a platform and a voice and readers who value what I have to offer. I stood up slowly, gathering my folder and my purse. I came here tonight hoping we might rebuild our relationship. I brought gifts because I still love all of you, despite how you've treated me. But sitting here, being the only person at a family gift exchange who was forgotten again, has shown me that nothing has really changed.
Oh my goodness. If you're loving this epic revenge as much as I am, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because you do not want to miss our next incredible story. Just as I was preparing to leave, Ava spoke up for the first time since the revelation began. Grandma, wait. I paused, looking at my 14-year-old granddaughter with curious eyes. She started, then stopped, clearly struggling to find the right words. I think what you did is amazing, and I think we've been really awful to you. Ava, Dana warned, clearly uncomfortable with her daughter's honesty. No, Mom, it's true, Ava continued, her voice growing stronger. We have been awful. Grandma used to call all the time, and we'd all roll our eyes like it was annoying. She'd invite us places, and you'd always find reasons why we couldn't go. She'd send birthday cards and Christmas presents, and we barely sent thank you notes. I felt my heart constrict with a mixture of pain and gratitude. At least one person in this family was willing to acknowledge the truth. And tonight, Ava, we literally didn't get her a gift for the gift exchange that you specifically told her about, Mom. That's not forgetting. That's just mean. Tyler looked up from his phone, finally seeming to grasp the gravity of the situation. Yeah, that was pretty messed up. Language, Dana said automatically, but her heart clearly wasn't in the correction. Ava stood up and walked over to me. Grandma, could you teach me?
About the blog and the business and all of it? I mean, if you want to. I know I haven't been a very good granddaughter lately, but I'd love to learn from you. I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time that evening. Oh, sweetheart, are you sure? It's a lot of work, and it's not always exciting. There's a lot of writing and editing and responding to emails and learning about technology. I want to learn, Ava said firmly. I want to understand how you built something so cool. And I want to spend time with you again, real time, not just obligatory holiday visits. I looked at this young woman who was brave enough to call out her family's behavior, mature enough to recognize what she'd missed, and curious enough to want to learn. Maybe not everything was lost after all. I would love that more than you know, I said softly, reaching out to squeeze her hand. But I want you to understand something first. This isn't just about business success or making money. It's about finding your voice, building something that matters to you, and creating connections with people who value what you have to offer. I get it, Ava said, and I want all of that. I'm tired of just scrolling through other people's lives on social media. I want to create something real. Dana finally found her voice again, though it sounded strained. Marta, surely we can work something out as a family. I mean, this is such a wonderful opportunity for all of us. Dana, I interrupted, my voice gentle but firm. You had opportunities. Every time I called and you were too busy to talk. Every time I suggested we spend time together and you had other plans. Every time I reached out and you responded with politeness instead of genuine interest, those were all opportunities to be part of my life, and you chose not to take them. I turned back to Ava. If you're serious about learning, you can come visit me during spring break. We'll work together at my kitchen table, the same table where I've been building this business while all of you moved on with your lives. But understand that this is between you and me, not a family project, not a business opportunity for your parents, just a grandmother and granddaughter spending time together and learning from each other. Brian finally stood up, his face flushed with what looked like a mixture of shame and frustration. Mom, I know we've made mistakes, but shutting us out completely— I'm not shutting you out, Brian. I'm just no longer waiting to be let in. There's a difference. I sat back down, realizing there was more I needed to say, not out of cruelty, but out of a need for them to understand the full scope of what had happened during our years of separation. Do you want to know what the hardest part was? I asked, looking around the room at their uncomfortable faces. It wasn't just the loneliness, though that was certainly difficult. It was the way I started to doubt myself. I could see Ava listening intently while the adults shifted uncomfortably. I would replay every conversation, every interaction, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Had I been too clingy? Too demanding? Had I somehow failed as a mother? As a grandmother? I began to believe that maybe I really was the problem, that maybe I deserved to be forgotten. Dana looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. But you know what I discovered while building my blog and connecting with my readers? I wasn't the only one. There are thousands of women my age who have been quietly pushed aside by their families. Women whose adult children are too busy with their own lives to make time for the people who raised them. Women who have become invisible in their own families. I pulled out one more paper from my folder, screenshots of comments from my blog posts. "Listen to this," I said, reading from the page. "Marta, your post about holiday loneliness made me cry because it was like you were writing about my own life. My daughter lives 20 minutes away, but I haven't seen my grandchildren in 6 months." Or this one, "I used to bake for my son's family every week, but they stopped inviting me over. Now I bake for my neighbors instead, and they actually appreciate it. I looked up at my family, who were all staring at me with various expressions of discomfort and dawning realization. These women found each other through my blog. We've created a community of women who refuse to sit quietly in the corners where our families have placed us. We share recipes and gardening tips, yes, but we also share business advice, travel plans, dating stories, because apparently there are quite a few widows my age who are rediscovering romance. And most importantly, we remind each other that our lives are far from over. Tyler finally spoke up for the first time since his cruel comment about me being used to it. Grandma, I didn't realize. I mean, I knew we didn't see you much, but I didn't think about how that felt for you. That's exactly the problem, sweetheart, I said gently. None of you thought about how it felt for me. You thought about your busy schedules, your work commitments, your social obligations, but you didn't think about the woman who used to be the center of this family, who suddenly found herself on the outside, looking in. I stood up again, tucking the papers back into my folder. But here's what I want you to understand. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you this so you understand why I can't just pretend nothing happened and go back to waiting for crumbs of your attention. Since you seem so interested in the business side of what I've built, I said, noting how Dana's eyes kept drifting back to the financial statements, let me tell you how it really works. I sat back down and pulled out my phone, opening my blog's dashboard. I post twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Each post takes me about 6 hours to write, edit, photograph, and format. I respond personally to every single comment and email, which is usually another 4 to 5 hours a week. I scroll through my content calendar. I plan my content 3 months in advance. I research trending topics in my demographic, I test products before I recommend them, and I track which types of posts get the most engagement. This isn't just me rambling about my day. This is a carefully planned business strategy.
Brian leaned forward, his business mind clearly engaged, despite the emotional tension in the room. How did you learn all of this? The marketing, the website design, the analytics? YouTube University, I said with a small smile, and trial and error. Lots of error. Did you know that I crashed my website 3 times while learning how to customize the design? Or that I accidentally sent the same email to my subscribers 4 times in one day because I couldn't figure out how the scheduling system worked? I could see Ava trying not to smile at the image of her grandmother wrestling with technology. But I kept learning, I continued. Because I had something that many young entrepreneurs don't have: time, patience, and absolutely nothing to lose. When you're starting over at 72, every small success feels like a miracle. I showed them my phone screen with the blog statistics. I now have subscribers in 43 states and 12 countries. I've been featured in 3 online magazines for women over 50. I have a waiting list of companies that want to partner with me because my audience trusts my recommendations. Dana couldn't hide her amazement. Martha, this is actually quite impressive from a business standpoint. The profit margins, the organic growth, the customer loyalty, these are metrics that most small businesses would envy. Thank you, I said dryly. I'm so glad my little hobby meets your professional standards. The sarcasm wasn't lost on anyone, and Dana had the grace to look embarrassed. But here's what you still don't understand, I continued. This isn't impressive because of the numbers. It's impressive because I built it from nothing, by myself, while you all assumed I was just sitting in my house feeling sorry for myself. Every subscriber, every dollar earned, every positive review, I earned all of that without any help from the people who should have been supporting me all along. 3 months later, Ava kept her word. She arrived at my new downtown condo during her spring break, eyes wide as she took in my modern kitchen with its large island that had become my home office and photography studio. "Wow, Grandma," she said, setting down her backpack.
this place is amazing. It's so you, but also completely different from the old house." I smiled, pouring her a glass of the fresh lemonade I'd made that morning. "That was the point, sweetheart. I love the memories from the old house, but I needed a space that was about moving forward, not just preserving the past." We spent that first day getting reacquainted, talking about everything from her school stress to my dating adventures. Yes, I had started dating again, much to Ava's delighted shock. But by the second day, we were ready to dive into the business side of things. "First lesson," I said, opening my laptop at the kitchen island. "Success in this business isn't about going viral or getting millions of followers. It's about finding your people and serving them consistently." I showed her my reader demographics: women aged 55 to 75, mostly widowed or divorced, with modest incomes but hungry for content that spoke to their experiences. "Your generation is obsessed with youth and overnight success, but my audience appreciates authenticity, reliability, and practical value. When I say I've tested a product for 3 months before recommending it, they know I mean it." Ava was taking notes on her phone, asking thoughtful questions about content planning and audience engagement, but what surprised me most was her insight into areas where I could improve. "Grandma, have you thought about video content? I know your audience might seem like they wouldn't be into that, but actually, women your age are one of the fastest growing demographics on platforms like YouTube and TikTok." I raised an eyebrow. "TikTok? Really? Really? There's this whole community of older women sharing life advice and showing that age doesn't mean you stop learning or growing. They call themselves Grand Talk or Wise Talk. I think you'd fit right in." By the end of her week-long visit, we had created my first YouTube video, a simple tutorial on organizing a pantry on a budget, and planned out a 3-month content calendar that included video content alongside my traditional blog posts. But more importantly, we had rebuilt our relationship on new terms. Not the traditional grandmother-granddaughter dynamic where I existed primarily to spoil her and ask about school, but as two women supporting each other's goals and dreams. "I can't wait to come back this summer," Ava said as I drove her to the airport. "And Grandma, I'm really proud of you, not just for the business stuff, but for not giving up on yourself when everyone else did." I felt tears sting my eyes as I hugged her goodbye. "I'm proud of you too, sweetheart, for having the courage to admit when your family was wrong and for wanting to be part of something real instead of just watching from the sidelines." 2 months after Ava's visit, I published the blog post that would change everything. I had been working on it for weeks, wrestling with how much personal detail to share, how vulnerable to be with my audience. The post was titled, "The Thanks I Gave Myself," and I published it on a Thursday morning in early May, not expecting much more than my usual engagement. I wrote about that Thanksgiving dinner in excruciating detail. The forgotten gift, the family dynamics, the moment I chose to reveal my success instead of hiding in shame. But I also wrote about the deeper journey, the loneliness that had nearly consumed me, the decision to build something new instead of waiting to be included in something old, and the discovery that my worth wasn't dependent on other people's recognition. I spent too many years waiting for permission to be proud of myself, waiting for my family to notice my accomplishments, waiting for invitations that never came, waiting for someone else to validate my worth. But the most liberating thing I've learned in these past 2 years is that I don't need anyone's permission to bloom. I can plant my own seeds, tend my own garden, and celebrate my own harvest. Within hours, the comments started pouring in. By the end of the week, the post had been shared over 1,000 times. By the end of the week, it had been picked up by several major websites and shared over 50,000 times across social media platforms. My inbox exploded with messages from women sharing their own stories of family neglect, professional dismissal, and social invisibility. Magazine editors wanted to interview me. Podcast hosts were reaching out. Companies were offering partnership deals. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source. Brian. His email read, "Mom, I just read your blog post. I've read it 3 times actually, and each time I feel more ashamed of how we treated you. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking to be included in your business. I just want you to know that I finally understand what we put you through, and I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry, and I'm proud of you, not just for what you've built, but for having the strength to build it without us." The viral success of Thanks I Gave Myself led to opportunities I never could have imagined. A publisher reached out to turn my blog into a book. A major women's magazine offered me a monthly column. Speaking engagement started rolling in. But the opportunity that excited me most was the chance to formalize something I had been doing informally for months, mentoring other women who wanted to start their own online businesses. I created a program called Second Blooming Mentorship Circle, limited to 12 women per cohort, designed specifically for women over 50 who were starting over in some way. Some were recent widows, like me. Others were going through divorces or career changes. A few were empty nesters discovering that they had no idea who they were outside of their roles as wives and mothers.
Brian leaned forward, his business mind clearly engaged despite the emotional tension in the room. How did you learn all of this? The marketing, the website design, the analytics? YouTube University, I said with a small smile, and trial and error. Lots of error. Did you know that I crashed my website 3 times while learning how to customize the design? Or that I accidentally sent the same email to my subscribers 4 times in one day because I couldn't figure out how the scheduling system worked? I could see Ava trying not to smile at the image of her grandmother wrestling with technology. But I kept learning, I continued, because I had something that many young entrepreneurs don't have: time, patience, and absolutely nothing to lose. When you're starting over at 72, every small success feels like a miracle. I showed them my phone screen with the blog's statistics. I now have subscribers in 43 states and 12 countries. I've been featured in 3 online magazines for women over 50. I have a waiting list of companies that want to partner with me because my audience trusts my recommendations. Dana couldn't hide her amazement. Martha, this is actually quite impressive from a business standpoint. The profit margins, the organic growth, the customer loyalty, these are metrics that most small businesses would envy. Thank you, I said dryly. I'm so glad my little hobby meets your professional standards. The sarcasm wasn't lost on anyone, and Dana had the grace to look embarrassed. But here's what you still don't understand. This isn't impressive because of the numbers. It's impressive because I built it from nothing, by myself, while you all assumed I was just sitting in my house feeling sorry for myself. Every subscriber, every dollar earned, every positive review, I earned all of that without any help from the people who should have been supporting me all along. 3 months later, Ava kept her word. She arrived at my new downtown condo during her spring break, eyes wide as she took in my modern kitchen with its large island that had become my home office and photography studio. "Wow, Grandma," she said, setting down her backpack. "This place is amazing. It's so you, but also completely different from the old house." I smiled, pouring her a glass of the fresh lemonade I'd made that morning. "That was the point, sweetheart. I love the memories from the old house, but I needed a space that was about moving forward, not just preserving the past." We spent that first day getting reacquainted, talking about everything from her school stress to my dating adventures. Yes, I had started dating again, much to Ava's delighted shock. But by the second day, we were ready to dive into the business side of things. "First lesson," I said, opening my laptop at the kitchen island. "Success in this business isn't about going viral or getting millions of followers. It's about finding your people and serving them consistently." I showed her my reader demographics. Women aged 55 to 75, mostly widowed or divorced with modest incomes, but hungry for content that spoke to their experiences. "Your generation is obsessed with youth and overnight success, but my audience appreciates authenticity, reliability, and practical value. When I say I've tested a product for 3 months before recommending it, they know I mean it." Ava was taking notes on her phone, asking thoughtful questions about content planning and audience engagement. But what surprised me most was her insight into areas where I could improve. "Grandma, have you thought about video content? I know your audience might seem like they wouldn't be into that, but actually, women your age are one of the fastest growing demographics on platforms like YouTube and TikTok." I raised an eyebrow. "TikTok? Really?" "Really. There's this whole community of older women sharing life advice and showing that age doesn't mean you stop learning or growing. They call themselves Grand Talk or Wise Talk.
I think you'd fit right in." By the end of her week-long visit, we had created my first YouTube video, a simple tutorial on organizing a pantry on a budget, and planned out a 3-month content calendar that included video content alongside my traditional blog posts. But more importantly, we had rebuilt our relationship on new terms. Not the traditional grandmother-granddaughter dynamic where I existed primarily to spoil her and ask about school, but as two women supporting each other's goals and dreams. "I can't wait to come back this summer," Ava said as I drove her to the airport. "And Grandma, I'm really proud of you, not just for the business stuff, but for not giving up on yourself when everyone else did." I felt tears sting my eyes as I hugged her goodbye. "I'm proud of you too, sweetheart, for having the courage to admit when your family was wrong, and for wanting to be part of something real instead of just watching from the sidelines." 2 months after Ava's visit, I published the blog post that would change everything. I had been working on it for weeks, wrestling with how much personal detail to share, how vulnerable to be with my audience. The post was titled, "The Thanks I Gave Myself," and I published it on a Thursday morning in early May, not expecting much more than my usual engagement. I wrote about that Thanksgiving dinner in excruciating detail, the forgotten gift, the family dynamics, the moment I chose to reveal my success instead of hiding in shame. But I also wrote about the deeper journey, the loneliness that had nearly consumed me, the decision to build something new instead of waiting to be included in something old, and the discovery that my worth wasn't dependent on other people's recognition. I spent too many years waiting for permission to be proud of myself, waiting for my family to notice my accomplishments, waiting for invitations that never came, waiting for someone else to validate my worth. But the most liberating thing I've learned in these past 2 years is that I don't need anyone's permission to bloom. I can plant my own seeds, tend my own garden, and celebrate my own harvest. Within hours, the comments started pouring in. By the end of the day, the post had been shared over 1,000 times. By the end of the week, it had been picked up by several major websites and shared over 50,000 times across social media platforms. My inbox exploded with messages from women sharing their own stories of family neglect, professional dismissal, and social invisibility. Magazine editors wanted to interview me, podcast hosts were reaching out, companies were offering partnership deals. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source. "Brian, Mom, I just read your blog post. I've read it 3 times, actually, and each time I feel more ashamed of how we treated you. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking to be included in your business. I just want you to know that I finally understand what we put you through, and I'm sorry. I'm incredibly sorry. And I'm proud of you, not just for what you've built, but for having the strength to build it without us."
Our first meeting was held in the community room of my condo building on a Saturday morning in June. I looked around the circle at these 12 women, ranging in age from 52 to 68, and felt a profound sense of purpose. Before we talk about business plans or marketing strategies, I want each of you to tell me about a time when someone made you feel invisible or irrelevant. Not to dwell on the pain, but to acknowledge that we're all here because we've decided that other people's perceptions of our worth are no longer acceptable to us. The stories that emerged were heartbreaking and familiar. Sarah, 58, whose adult children treated her like a free babysitting service, but never asked about her own interests or dreams. Linda, 63, whose husband had dismissed her desire to go back to school as silly until she finally left him and enrolled in community college at age 60. Maria, 55, whose boss had passed her over for promotion 3 times in favor of younger, less experienced candidates. But as the women shared their stories, something beautiful happened. The shame and hurt began to transform into determination and solidarity. These weren't victims sharing sob stories. These were warriors comparing battle scars and preparing for victory. "Now," I said after everyone had spoken, "let's talk about what we're going to build together."
A year after that devastating Thanksgiving dinner, I found myself facing another family gathering, this time Christmas at my new condo. But the circumstances were entirely different. The invitation had come from me, not out of desperate hope for inclusion, but from a position of strength and choice. I had invited Ava, who had become not just my granddaughter, but my business partner and social media manager. I had also extended an invitation to Brian and Dana, with clear boundaries about what the visit would and wouldn't include. "I'd like to see you both," I had written in my email, "but I want to be clear about expectations. This isn't an opportunity to discuss my business as a potential family investment. This isn't a chance to offer advice I didn't ask for or to suggest ways I could be doing things differently. This is simply a chance to spend time together as family, if that's something you genuinely want." Tyler was spending Christmas with his girlfriend's family, a choice I respected and didn't take personally, but Ava was there helping me prepare dinner and sharing updates about her own small business venture, a college consulting service for first-generation students that she had launched with my guidance and support. When Brian and Dana arrived, the dynamic was entirely different from that painful Thanksgiving. They were visitors in my space, following my lead, respecting my boundaries. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on my recent television appearance, Ava's academic achievements, and Brian's work, but nobody tried to dominate or exclude anyone else. But the moment that truly completed the circle came when Dana, clearly nervous, handed me a beautifully wrapped gift. "I wanted to get you something meaningful this year. Not just something to check a box, but something that shows I've been paying attention to who you really are." Inside the elegant wrapping was a first edition of The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, inscribed with a note to Martha, who proved that it's never too late to redefine yourself on your own terms. "Thank you for showing all of us what real strength looks like." I felt tears prick my eyes as I read the inscription, not because of the gift itself, but because of what it represented. Genuine recognition of who I had become, rather than dismissal of who I had always been. "Thank you," I said simply. "This means more than you know." But the real gift came later, as we were cleaning up after dinner. Dana approached me in the kitchen, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. She said, "Martha, I need to apologize, not just for the gift thing at Thanksgiving, but for all of it, for making you feel unwelcome in your own family, for treating your contributions like they didn't matter, for assuming that because you were older, you didn't have anything new to offer." She paused, struggling with the words. I think I was so focused on protecting my own little family unit that I forgot you were part of it too. And I was intimidated by you, by how effortlessly you could cook these amazing meals and remember everyone's favorite things and make everything feel special. Instead of learning from you, I just pushed you out. I set down the dish I had been washing and really looked at her. "Dana, I appreciate you saying that, I really do. But I need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I can't go back to being the grandmother who waits quietly for invitations and accepts whatever scraps of attention you're willing to give me." "I know," she said quickly, "and I don't want you to. What you've built is incredible, and the way you've transformed your life is inspiring. I hope we can build something new together. Not with your business," she added quickly, "but with our relationship." I nodded slowly. "I'd like that, but it has to be based on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives, not obligation or guilt or convenience." "I understand," she said, "and I want you to know I've been reading your blog, all of it, and I've been sharing it with my friends who are going through similar transitions. You're helping people, Martha. More people than you probably realize.
As I write this story now, 18 months after that transformative Thanksgiving, my life looks nothing like it did when I was sitting alone in my brick house in Knoxville, wondering why my phone never rang. My blog now has over 200,000 subscribers across multiple platforms. My first book, Second Blooming, A Guide to Reinventing Yourself After 60, became a bestseller on Amazon within 2 weeks of its release. I've spoken at conferences across the country, appeared on national television shows, and been featured in magazines I used to read while feeling invisible. But the numbers, while gratifying, aren't what matter most. What matters is the community we've built. Thousands of women who have decided that their stories aren't over, that their voices matter, that their wisdom has value. What matters is Ava, who is now studying business and journalism in college, partly inspired by watching me build something from nothing. She still manages my social media accounts and spends her summer breaks working with me, but now as a paid employee of my LLC, not just as my granddaughter helping out. What matters is the Mentorship program, which now has a waiting list 6 months long and has helped over 100 women launch their own businesses or creative projects. What matters is the relationship I've rebuilt with Brian, based on mutual respect rather than obligation, and the slowly improving dynamic with Dana, who has learned to ask about my life rather than just telling me about hers. But perhaps what matters most is the woman I've become, someone who no longer waits for permission to take up space in the world, who no longer equates her worth with other people's attention, who has learned that the most important table you can build is your own. That Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be about family and gratitude, but it became something much more powerful, a moment of reckoning that forced me to choose between accepting invisibility and claiming my own power. I chose power. I chose to bloom again, on my own terms, in my own time, in my own way. And let me tell you something, this second blooming has been more beautiful than I ever imagined possible. The phone rings constantly now, but these days it's because people want to hear what I have to say, not because they need something from me. My calendar is full of speaking engagements, business meetings, and coffee dates with the amazing women I've met through this journey. I'm not the forgotten grandmother anymore. I'm Martha Ellison, entrepreneur, author, mentor, and proof that it's never too late to plant new seeds and watch them grow into something magnificent. And the best part? I built my own table, and I left room for anyone who genuinely wants to join me. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. You are never too old, too forgotten, or too far behind to start over. Whether you're 30 or 70, whether you've been pushed aside by family or overlooked by colleagues, whether you feel invisible in a world that seems to value youth over wisdom, you have more power than you realize. Don't wait for permission to be proud of yourself. Don't wait for invitations that may never come. Don't wait for someone else to validate your worth or recognize your potential. Plant your own seeds. Tend your own garden. Build your own table. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful blooms come from the most unexpected places in the most surprising seasons. The world is waiting to hear what you have to say. The question is, are you ready to say it? That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks for letting this old grandmother remind you that revenge is a dish best served with a side of success
and a generous helping of self-respect. Now, if you loved this grandma revenge story, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more incredible revenge stories, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? I read every single comment because that's what successful content creators do. Until next time, remember, you're never too old to bloom again.